the power first cut out, I thought it was just another citywide blackout. It wasn't unusual for the ancient electrical infrastructure in this city to falter every now and then. A pang of annoyance echoed within me, but quickly subsided. This was part of living alone in my first apartment. Independence came with its fair share of inconveniences. However, the ordinary quickly morphed into the extraordinary when I looked out my apartment window. I expected to see a city plunged into darkness, but instead, I was met with the normal nighttime cityscape. Office towers, skyscrapers, and neighboring apartments blazed with light. It seemed that my building was the only one cloaked in darkness. I felt a chill run down my spine and my stomach twisted with unease. The darkness around me seemed oppressive, as if it was slowly pushing me towards a corner. I reached for my phone, hoping for the comforting glow of the screen to slice through the darkness, but my hand clutched at emptiness. I'd left it charging in the other room. I muttered a curse and fumbled my way through the dark. The fear was irrational, I knew. I was alone in my apartment. The door was bolted shut. I was safe. And yet, the cold tendrils of paranoia were beginning to curl around my heart. I tried to laugh it off, to berate myself for being so childish. But the silence of my apartment only seemed to amplify the terror clawing at my mind. As I groped through the darkness, my foot brushed against something on the floor, something that shouldn't be there. It was soft. It moved. A gasp caught in my throat as I fell backward, my mind conjuring horrifying images of what could be lying on my apartment floor. Who was there? My voice shook, barely a whisper in the quiet darkness. My heart pounded against my chest like a wild animal attempting to escape its cage. There was no reply. In the dark, time seemed to stretch. Each second bloated into minutes, into hours. Fear, raw and all-consuming, threatened to choke me. Suddenly, I heard a low, growling noise. It was guttural, primal, and much too close. Every hair on my body stood on end. Driven by sheer terror, I leaped to my feet and ran towards my bedroom. The darkness swallowed me whole. I crashed into furniture, fumbling blindly towards the perceived safety of my bedroom. I reached the room and slammed the door shut, panting hard. I was trembling uncontrollably, my mind filled with nightmarish visions of what could be in my apartment. Then it struck me, my phone. I'd left it charging on my bedside table. I scrambled towards the faint, pulsating glow of the charging indicator, almost sobbing in relief as I held the phone in my hand. Just as I was about to dial 911, the bedroom door creaked open. My blood turned to ice. The growling noise was back, louder this time. I didn't consider my options. I flung open my window, slipped onto the fire escape, and began to descend as quickly and quietly as I could. The darkness seemed less oppressive outside, the city lights offering some semblance of safety. But the sound from my apartment didn't stop. It filled the night air, turning it thick and heavy with fear. I reached the ground just as the power in my building flickered back on. Looking up, I could see the silhouette of something massive moving in my apartment. Something that definitely wasn't human. The police arrived soon after, alerted by my frantic call. They found my apartment ransacked, the remains of a large animal, maybe a bear, that had somehow managed to get in through the fire escape. The relief that washed over me was indescribable. As a jogger in my late 30s, my daily early morning run through the quiet neighborhood was part of a routine, a sacred ritual that I held dear. But that fateful morning held a terror I never could have foreseen. The sky was a patchwork of menacing dark clouds, casting long, spectral shadows that seemed to harbor a malevolent force. The wind howled through the skeletal trees like whispers of long-forgotten tales of horror. Everything was unusually still, the silence eerie and discomforting. It felt as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something dreadful to unfold. My feet rhythmically hit the pavement, the sound echoing through the silent street. That's when I noticed it. A strange, rusty growling sound that seemed to rise and fall with the gusts of wind. Dismissing it as a trick of the wind, I continued my run, but the unsettling growl stayed with me, growing louder and more persistent with each step. Then I saw it, a hulking figure lurking at the edge of the street, its eyes reflecting the dim streetlight. It was a stray dog, massive and menacing, unlike any I had seen before. Its mangy fur was slicked back, revealing a mottled skin that seemed to writhe and pulse in an unholy manner. Its eyes, however, were what terrified me the most. They were an unnatural crimson, burning with a terrifying, insatiable hunger that made my blood run cold. A guttural growl escaped its throat, and I knew in that moment that I was its prey. Fear coursed through my veins, paralyzing me momentarily. Panic-stricken, I tried to remember every bit of advice I had ever heard about dealing with aggressive dogs, but my mind was a whirl of chaos. The air seemed thick, suffocating. The stray dog snarled, its lips curling to reveal yellow, jagged teeth, and I saw my impending doom reflected in its eyes. Summoning every ounce of courage, I slowly backed away, maintaining eye contact with the beast. My heart pounded in my chest like a frenzied drummer, the echoes seeming to punctuate the impending danger. I could feel the beast's anticipation, almost tasting its malicious delight in my fear. Just as the terror threatened to overwhelm me, a miracle happened. A stray cat darted out of the bushes nearby, its sudden movement catching the dog's attention. With a menacing snarl, the dog abandoned me, charging after the cat instead. I felt a surge of gratitude for the feline, even as I feared for its safety. With the beast momentarily distracted, I sprinted back home, my breath coming out in ragged gasps. I could hear the dog's snarls fading behind me as I ran, my heart threatening to burst out of my chest. I didn't stop running until I was safely inside my house, door securely bolted behind me. That morning changed my life. The quiet, serene neighborhood that I had loved now held a terror that haunted my dreams. I still go on my morning jogs, but I choose a different route, one that doesn't cross the path of that demonic stray dog. The terror of that encounter has etched a deep scar in my memory, a stark reminder of the day when a routine job turned into a horrifying nightmare. Darkness clung to every corner of the isolated cabin as I rested, the silence of the wilderness providing a soothing respite from my normally bustling city life. My name is Mark, a man in my late 20s, who, against the advice of friends, had decided to spend my vacation alone in this secluded retreat. It was a quaint, rustic cabin, its lob walls embedded with years of history. I spent the days hiking through dense forests, observing wildlife, and the nights stargazing, listening to the harmonious symphony of crickets and owls. It was perfect until that night. It was just past midnight when I heard it, a knock. 3 sharp raps on the wooden door, each followed by an eerily unnatural silence. My heart pounded against my ribcage. Who could possibly be out here at this hour? Swallowing hard, I rose from my worn-out leather couch, the book I had been reading slipping from my lap. My bare feet brushed against the cold floorboards, their creaks echoing through the cabin. The moon, pale and uninviting, peered in through the window, casting long, monstrous shadows around the room. Another knock, louder this time, more insistent. My palms were slick with cold sweat as I gripped the doorknob. I forced a smile, a futile attempt to convince myself that it might just be a lost hiker. Slowly, I opened the door. There stood a man. His face was cast in shadows, obscuring his features. His form was hunched, body concealed by a tattered, rain-soaked coat. There was a faint, acrid smell about him, a mix of damp earth and something else, something I couldn't place but that set my nerves on edge. "I'm lost," he croaked, his voice a gravelly whisper that made my skin prickle. His head tilted slightly as if studying me. "May I come in?" An inexplicable chill crawled down my spine, yet his plea tugged at my sympathy. I hesitated for a moment, then gestured for him to come inside. He shuffled past me, each step awkward and stiff. As he moved further into the room, the moonlight fell upon his face. His skin was pale, his eyes hollow and vacant, but the most chilling detail was his smile, an unnerving, grotesque contortion of the lips that never reached his lifeless eyes. Hours turned into a nerve-wracking nightmare as I tried to engage him in conversation, always met with clipped replies or that haunting, silent smile. His presence was a palpable darkness, a heavy blanket of dread that consumed the cabin's once welcoming atmosphere. Just when my paranoia reached its peak, a shrill scream echoed through the cabin, the sound raw and primal. It took me a moment to realize it was coming from my phone. A notification from the local authorities. The message that displayed on the screen turned my blood to ice. Warning, escaped patient for a mental institution, potentially dangerous, PLEST An accompanying image loaded. My heart clenched in horror as the face of the man sitting in my living room filled the screen. The cabin spun around me as the reality of my situation sank in. Fear threatened to choke me, but then something ignited within me, a primal instinct to survive. I looked at the kitchen, my eyes fixated on the wooden block that housed my set of sharp knives. Determined, I rose from my seat, the man's hollow eyes following me. The next few moments were a blur, a silent, deadly dance between predator and prey. But luck, it seemed, was on my side. I managed to incapacitate the man long enough to lock myself in the bedroom and dial 911. When the police arrived, they found the man unconscious, my vacation ending in a whirlwind of horror and disbelief. It took me a long time to get over the trauma, but today, as I recount the event, I'm grateful. Grateful because I survived, and for the lesson that it taught me. Danger, oftentimes, lurks in the most unexpected places, and not all late-night knocks are benign.